So first up, an exclusive from Reuters, Standard Chartered expected to pay just over $1 billion to resolve US and UK probes. So Standard Chartered Plc has agreed to pay $1.1 billion to US and British authorities for conducting illegal financial transactions that violated sanctions against Iran and other countries, government authorities announced on Tuesday. They said that Standard Chartered undermined the integrity of our financial system and harmed our national security by deliberately providing Iranians with coveted access to the US economy. And it seems that payments from Iran got through a fax machine at the Dubai branch, obviously a lot of fintech going on there. And dozens of clients used an internet platform to access US dollar accounts from Iran, where bank compliance officers failed to take steps to ensure that those transactions were blocked. So in a statement on Tuesday, Standard Chartered said that it accepted responsibility for the violations, which stopped after 2014, and the bank said it had cooperated with investigations. So AML and sort of the corner edge cases of transferring money across the world, what do we think?
So I think from my perspective anyway, links back to 2014. I think you need to sort of go back in time on this. I think the interesting, I suppose, overarching point on this is how Standard Chartered have, I guess, almost allocated cash, if you like, in their end of years or in their 2018 results for this. They knew it was coming. This shouldn't be too much of a surprise, particularly for anybody right now. I think the interesting thing is the motivation as to why they stopped in 2014 versus now, and what happened in the market around that time, which we'll probably bring up in a sec. But also, I suppose, going forward, and as more and more sanctions go on to more and more countries, and as Donald Trump sort of makes his way around the world, how is this going to affect, again, banks going forward in terms of more and more countries coming on those sanctions lists?
But Standard Chartered aren't the only one. I mean, 2015-17, Deutsche paid 11.2 billion for a wide variety of valuations. There's something interesting, I think, in just the number of global banks who are being expected to police arguably trillions of transactions, on behalf of the regulator to stop this. And we've got fax machines and apps and, all kinds of things going on.
In this latest investigation, it came out of a probe on another bank. It came out of a probe against BNP Paribas, which then paid a record 8.9 billion in penalties. So it's almost like a daisy chain effect here.
I'd add that this was a historic, which was already mentioned, but I think that's quite important to realise in this, and also the complexity of cross-border transfer. You said the daisy chain effect. It's going through multiple banks. In those days, there was not so much focus on automated pickup of suspicious transactions, etc., etc. We're a very different world, and maybe we'll come on to what a bank's trying to do today to ensure they don't end up in the same position. So no surprise, still comes to over $2 billion if you add up the fines for Standard Chartered. But
and I guess there's that, there's always that question of local branch manager trying to help his customers, his clients, move stuff along. You've got head office a long way away, and AML is there in the back of your mind, but still, the guy in front of me wants to move this money. How do I help them along in that?
Maybe back then, I think any branch manager would immediately say it's front of mind today. So much that they might like to help, they know somewhere it will be picked up, so it just wouldn't happen.
Interesting. Anthony, what do you think?
Well, there's been like 25 billion or 26 billion of fines over the last 8 years, right? And they're still coming out. So as much as maybe a local branch manager is aware that it's a problem, the 28 billion is not his problem. And he's just caring about his P&L, right? And it comes down to that incentive of what are these local guys doing? Are you willing to turn a blind eye to $500,000 here? Or are you actually just, have they got targets, which is more important in the short term? And the AML is, to Jason's point, just a head office problem.
But if the money's US dollars, it has to clear through New York. That's my point. It will always go through there. So the branch manager will be aware. There may be very small transactions, say intra Middle East, but 99.9 go through US. So.
I think it's something that Simon Taylor often talks about, that 3% of illegal or AML transactions are really caught, 97% out there. The ones that are caught suddenly have billions of fines. I mean, if you extrapolate that, That's 97% of those transactions still in court with a lot of fines. And we don't have the interconnected data a lot of the time in order to work out what's real and what's not. Is it just the people who aren't very good at this who are getting caught at the moment?
I think the motivations there on if the profits almost outweigh the fines, and the motivations will continue to be there to do this. And I think that's I think the interesting thing about the BNP Paribas fine was that they actually stopped their dollar clearing business, and they penalised actually the operations of BNP Paribas, which was, I think, maybe was the wake up call for Standard Chartered back in 2014. But I think I suppose if you're looking at the way that banks are penalised for this. Again, it's profits over fines, profits in general win at the moment. And I think that is almost encouraging the wrong kind of behaviour. But again, to Chris's point, this goes back to 2014. So since then, maybe the right incentives almost to stop this behaviour have been put in place.
And there are a lot of automated softwares that banks have to have if they're going to play in the US market, US dollar markets.
Interesting stuff. Well, let's move on to the next story.